Alright, so hello one and all, welcome back to another Mushoku Tensei episode skipped content review thing. We are here with Season 2, Part 1, Episode 10. So, let's just jump into things. The anime starts us off with the adaptation of Sylphiette Part 3, which I had covered back in my skipped content episode 8. This does, however, also cover Sylphiette Part 4, so I will briefly talk about that now. In this part, we have Sylphie. Again, I should mention, these Sylphie side stories have the point of view of Sylphie, not Fitz, and they are like two different characters, or they're presented to be, but as the parts go on, it feels almost more and more like the walls between the characters are, it's just disappearing, and so they're kind of becoming one, just subtly, I guess. But anyway, we have Sylphie quite jealous of Nanahoshi and isn't too fond of her. She doesn't think that Rudeus and Nanahoshi have feelings for each other or anything, but she doesn't like how close they are with each other. She feels as though she's not important, and if Fitz were to suddenly leave and never come back, Rudeus would just move on in no time. And so yeah, again, with the previous three parts, they've always been two different characters. But in here, it's kind of insinuating that if Fitz leaves, then that affects Sylphie because, you know, they're the same person, but it doesn't matter. We know that they're the same person, but this is just the book trying to like spell it out to us at this point, kind of. But, you know, Sylphie wants to get closer to Rudeus, and she doesn't want Fitz to, though. And that's basically just her little point of view for the final part. But again, like in the previous three parts of this, Sylphie is specifically shown to be a separate person, and it's midway that this, through this chapter, and a little bit of the last one, I'm pretty sure, but the line really gets blurred. Like, she wants to get close to Rudeus. She doesn't want Fitz to. And that's kind of it for her little point of view until her final Sylphiette part chapter thing. The rest of this part kind of just goes over like her insecurities and how she wondered like when she became such a coward. So now anyway, cutting to Rudeus, he reveals that it had now been a year since he had enrolled at Renoa Magic University, and he just turned 16. Since people only celebrated their 5th, 10th, and 15th birthday, he didn't really know his exact date and didn't really care either. After all, according to him, age is just a number, which in context is fine. Out of context, little sus, man. But anyway, this is where, I'm going to be honest, I get a little confused about the timeline, and it legitimately frustrates me a little bit. So let me break it down for you. As it's stated, at the beginning of the fall, Rudeus had been at the academy for 5 months, meaning that the earliest that he could have started attending the school was at the beginning of April. This is just fact. That's just how it works, right? However, it's now stated that it's been a year since he's enrolled, meaning that it should be April, right? Well, that's wrong, apparently. Because in a bit, it's explained that the winter season is just about to come, and it's now winter again, without any kind of like time skip happening, right? It's getting colder outside now, so winter is coming. So how does that make sense? Trying to figure out Mushoku Tensei like season by season is just a nightmare, right? Month by month is ridiculous. Sometimes even trying to figure out what year it is frustrating, like right now. However, in this case, there is something that I think can help us out here in this problem that nobody thought existed until me. I know I'm not the only person who thinks that the timeline is a little confusing. I've seen like Reddit posts out there before. It's not just me. I know I'm not crazy. I'm not. But anyway, Rudeus said that he just turned 16. He doesn't know the exact date, but he just turned. And so if, like what others theorize, his birthday's in November because that's when he died. It's like November 16th or 11th or something is like his actual death, I think. But all of this makes a little bit more sense now. Rudeus had not spent a year at the academy. We'd have to assume that that statement is a lie. It would only have been about 8 to 9 months. So to make this make sense, he's just exaggerating. It's like, yeah, it's been about a year, 9 months, close enough, whatever. I've been here for a year. But so, which I don't really like to do. I don't like to say that the book is lying to us, but I don't know how. Maybe I'm just an idiot. Maybe I'm just a dumbass. But I don't know. Look, the reason why I go on tangents like this is because chronology is important. And again, I've seen other people search online that Like, one flaw the Mushoku Tensei has with its writing, not the story necessarily, but just the writing, is that the timeline can get a little messy at times. Although it could just be a lack of transparency with like how things are worded, and we just aren't told when certain events happen, or it's just an error in translation, which entirely could be true, because especially in, I think it's volume 9, I remember reading, and there were like quite a few spelling errors and like grammar mistakes, so it could definitely just be a mistranslation. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. But when it comes to people like me who are overanalyzing the shit out of this, it does get in the way. Anyway, moving on. Now that Rudeus had met Nanahoshi, his daily routine had somewhat changed. He still trained like usual, but now with Batagati just kind of staring at him. However, one day Batagati asked Rudeus why he trained physically despite having such a large amount of mana and being able to coat himself in Toki, aka Battle Aura. Rudeus asks what that is exactly. What is Toki? And the way Batagati explained it was that it's a technique that used mana to drastically improve your body's physical capabilities and strengthen yourself to unnatural extremes. The way to do that is to spread a field of mana around your entire body and press it tightly against you. Normally, after just training physically, it would come naturally, but for whatever reason, it just wasn't working for Rudeus. This could happen sometimes, and not even Laplace could use Toki, but even still, he was insanely powerful. And Rudeus asks if Batagati had ever met Laplace, and he said that he was nearly completely annihilated in one blow by him. He thought that he was killed for a moment there. And Rudeus then asks if if he himself fought like Laplace, that he could get stronger, but Batagati highly advises against it. If Rudeus used his mana the way that Laplace did, he would simply blow his body apart. Channeling too much mana at once could destroy someone from the inside out. Laplace had not only possessed a large amount of mana, but also a sturdy body and technical skill to use it fully. On the other hand, Rudeus did have an unusually high mana pool, but he did have a fragile human body, so he couldn't use it to its fullest potential. No matter how hard he trained, he was never going to reach his level. Laplace is simply built different. That's, at the end of the day, that's what it is. And then, like in the anime, they start talking about why people wish to get stronger. But in the books, Batagati mentions that his nephew fought for fame and strength, but got humbled one day and nearly died. After that, he had settled down, but before that, he wanted to become the strongest man in the world. And I'm pretty sure, if I'm understanding who this nephew is, we will meet them one day, which is really cool. Anyway, after that, the anime covers the scene with Goliath, which was shown in greater detail in the previous skip content video, but from there, after training, Rudeus then heads to class and starts with intermediate detoxification magic, and we learn a little bit about it. Even at beginner level, detoxification allowed you to cure a wide range of common illnesses and purge the body of most poisons. However, when you get to rarer illnesses or the venom used by highly ranked monsters, you needed more advanced spells with specific incantations that required much more mana. Intermediate detoxification classes and above were mostly learning those like specifically targeted spells, and those incantations were ridiculously long. Even at intermediate level, you need to memorize phrases several times longer than any offensive spell, like kind of ever. And because incantations over the years have gotten shorter, the same applied to detoxification spells. However, even then, they were still long, especially the higher up you go within the tiers. For intermediate detoxification, not only were the incantations long, but there were over 50 of them that you needed to memorize, some of which were used to create poisons even. And then in advanced tier, you needed to learn more than 100 spells. And then Saint tier. With that, there was less need to memorize things, likely meaning that Saint spells were very similar to advanced spells, however, just the amount of mana needed was much greater, I'm assuming, and perhaps material differences, I don't know. But then there's King tier and above. These were spells that were mostly held as state secrets by select nations. Some could create poisons incurable by any ordinary magic as a threat towards other countries, and others could create specific antidotes to those same poisons. It's basically kind of like an arms race. And as you move from intermediate detoxification to advanced and onward, the incantations grew steadily longer. Rudeus had figured, based on that, a king tier spell might require you to recite like an entire book out loud just to do it. And now finally, there was only one divine tier detoxification spell that Rudeus had ever heard of, and it was a spell to cure a very rare disease called Petrification Syndrome, also known as Magic Stone Disease. If left untreated, it would slowly transform the mana inside your body into magical stone. Only one person is known to be able to use said spell, and it's guarded carefully in the Great Cathedral of Melitian. And it's here that the anime starts to jumble a lot of this up. Actually, this entire episode has kind of been difficult to write my skip content for overall, just because of how varied the source material for the episode took. There was it kind of just jumped all over the place. And so some of the scenes that the light novel had were covered in the anime somewhat, many were skipped, and the order of them is just completely random. So I'll talk about them in order of how they appear in the light novel. So, after Rudeus' detoxification class, he has lunch with Zenoba and Juliet. He normally eats outside, however, because it's been getting colder, he had decided to create a little stone shelter with a small fire inside. However, Vice Principal Genius had quickly shown up to get Rudeus to tear it down. From there, he took to the first floor with Zenoba and Julie, without Zenoba getting angry about it, surprisingly. This is because there was an unwritten rule about slaves not being able to sit on the third floor, where Zenoba would normally want to sit. They weren't going to sit on the second floor with Cliff and Aline Elise because the two were always feeding each other food and making out, and they didn't even care about any of the stairs that they got, so the first floor it is. This little button is making little click click noises. Anyway, the scene with Badigatti went about the same, and then Rudeus had class with Persenna. The class that they took was Advanced Healing, located in a 5th year classroom. It was kind of surprising that Persenna, without Linnea even, was taking this class. Normally Persenna didn't take anything seriously, but she actually did pay attention in lectures, while eating some meat, of course. But most other students were still afraid of her, not wanting to talk to her or work with her in group assignments and training, and so she had been spending a lot of time by herself lately. She was genuinely thankful for Rudeus for taking this class with her, and she gave him her most prized possession, a half-eaten piece of jerky. Because she was being sincere about it, he accepted it happily. He then licked it all over, savoring the dog girl flavor, and she looked at him in disgust. But can you blame him though? Anyway, when it comes to Linnea, however, she had been asking Rudeus many questions about elemental spells, specifically about combined magic. He tried to teach her specifically how rainwater is the same water from the oceans, and how evaporation and whatever, it's a big cycle, right? But she couldn't wrap her head around it. With Sylphie, it was pretty fast teaching, but either Sylphie is just more intelligent, or it's because of her young age that she was able to learn combined magic much easier than Linnea and many other students. And on the topic of elemental magic, it stated that Rudeus had officially become a Saint tier Earth Mage and had learned the Earth Saint spell, Sandstorm. It was basically just a better version of the advanced tier spell, Duststorm. Sandstorm conjures a very powerful sand torrent and blanketed a wide area around its caster. This would render anyone within it blind and make it difficult to breathe in. Where the water spell Cumulonimbus involved a careful manipulation of rain clouds and wind currents and whatnot, Sandstorm kind of just required you to blow around a massive quantity of tiny particles of sand, and so it seemed like the many spells at this tier involved changing the weather in some kind of way. But the professor who taught Rudeus the spell cautioned him to not use the spell in towns or near crops, as it could cause a lot of damage. And Rudeus was kind of interested in becoming Saint tier in wind and fire, but he's not really going to go out of his way to do so. For whatever reason. Dude's lazy. He acknowledges that he's kind of hit a dry spot in learning and education, but he kind of just doesn't do anything about it. I don't know, man. Anyway, Badigatti had recently told Rudeus that the stone cannon that he fired at him was Emperor level, which is pretty crazy. So I guess, Rudeus isn't slacking off entirely, but still, the dude can pull out Emperor tier spells like it's a Tuesday. He can do so much more, but he just doesn't want to. Anyway, in early afternoons is when Rudeus heads into Nanahoshie's laboratory to help her out. For some reason, the anime really likes Nanahoshi and adapts her scenes in full, almost 1-to-1. So, that saves my work, I guess, but it is interesting. Anyway, but the only thing that left out was how Nanahoshi lived there. The school had given her quite a lot of space, 3 decently sized rooms actually. However, with how much crap is cluttering in the room, it does feel much smaller. And one of the other rooms is also where she sleeps, which there's a pile of food right next to her bed, and so she really does live like a world-class shut-in, and that's saying something coming from Rudeus. Something that the anime doesn't really cover is we slowly learn Nanahoshi is a little bit of I don't, she's kind of a loser, I guess, right? She's into like sci-fi and fantasy movies. She lives like a shut-in, very similar to Rudeus, right? I'm pretty sure she's into like manga and anime, and so it's like she's a nerd just like him. Like she's almost worse than him. It's not like she's a complete slob or anything, but she's definitely intelligent, but so is Rudeus, actually. They're very similar characters, except their morals are just completely different. But anyway, at the end of their exchange, she gives him the book, Sig's Summoning. This book was actually shown quite a while ago, though, way back in Volume 2, aka Season 1, Episode 6, when Rudeus, Eris, and Ghislaine were shopping together. Like, I swear, this is like One Piece levels of foreshadowing for the most meaningless crap ever. It's insane, right? And then we have the aphrodisiac later on. It's amazing. I love it. Anyway, after that, Rudeus would drop by the library for a few hours where he'd often hang out with Fitz and study. However, sometimes Fitz would join him in helping Nanahoshi, and when Fitz tried to help with like the spell circles to like put his mana to activate them, he could only do about 20 or so before he became tired, while Rudeus could like basically do it all day without breaking a sweat. So that just shows the clear difference in their like mana. And I bet part of that is Rudeus' excessive mana pool, obviously, but I wonder if Rudeus is just like recharging mana faster than he's using it up. But that's just my headcanon speculation. We don't really know. There's not too much discussion about recharging mana. At all, really, I don't think, unless it's something that the light novel changed later on. I'm not too sure, but doesn't matter. But lately, however, Fitz had been quite gloomy. Rudeus thinks that this is because Fitz had studied his entire life and dedicated it to magic, only to be one-upped by Rudeus in basically every way. Fitz didn't really want to waste too much mana since he has to save some just in case Ariel's in danger, but he also kind of just felt useless. Rudeus understands the first half, but he argues and says that Fitz is important. Both of them have been studying like teleportation for months, and so it's only fair that the both of them are here when they're working on it with Nanahoshi. However, Fitz could just be feeling uncomfortable around Nanahoshi, as it doesn't seem like that either of them like each other for whatever reason. I don't know why Nanahoshi doesn't like Fitz, but that's neither here nor there. Regardless, as the sun set, Rudeus and Fitz headed back to his dorm and would part ways just before the girls' dorm area, of course. However, Fitz said that it was okay for Rudeus to take this path through the girls' dorm area now. Apparently, Rudeus had gotten quite popular with the ladies as of late, all thanks to Linny and Persenna spreading the good word. As Fitz explained this, he imitated Linny and put like his hands like this and everything, like going all nyah, and it's kind of cute. But anyway, then they talk about Goliath and how she's still afraid of Rudeus. And this too is also thanks to Linnea and Persenna. The two have been saying good things about Rudeus, but they've also been teasing Goliath about it. He asks Fitz to like tell the two to not go too far because it's kind of bullying, or he hopes that it doesn't become bullying, if it isn't already. But Fitz goes like, wow, you really are a nice guy, Rudeus. And then the two part ways as Fitz reassures Rudeus that he can follow him through the girls' dorm if he wants to. However, Rudeus tries to put like his best cool guy impression on, and he goes like, it's alright. If I've managed to earn myself a decent reputation here, I'd better not ruin it by strutting down the road like I own the place. And Fitz says that this certainly sounds like Rudeus' style, as it appears he's trying not to laugh. And as the two fully parted ways, Rudeus noticed that Fitz did seem a little sad about him not like joining him. And I kind of just love this entire interaction. It was just so cute, and I wish that I could properly showcase it, because part of it is the wording, and it's just amazing. But I can't just read you the book, right? I can't just do that. But anyway, after dinner was when Rudeus had been giving Juliet her daily magic lesson in Zenoba's room. And just like in the anime, he goes over how in just a year she's improving pretty well. Although, since she just started using tools to like physically carve the figures, she's still a little clumsy with them. Rudeus, meanwhile, was working on a 1/8 figure of Fitz, but he wasn't exactly too sure how to proportion the body since Fitz always wore a cloak. Elves mostly wore thin without much body fat. However, he questioned what to put in the crotch area. He didn't want to put anything between his legs, but Fitz might get mad at him if he depicted him as a girl. And so already we can see that Rudeus does suspect that Fitz is not a guy, which is far soon. Like, the books really do show Rudeus to be more intelligent. Even before he met Nanahoshi, he knew that she was from Earth. And even here, he does suspect that Fitz... He doesn't suspect that Fitz is Sylphie, but he at least suspects that Fitz is a girl. And he has for kind of a while, right? But anyway, Zenoba says that he'll forcibly rip off his clothes, like off of Fitz, to find out his gender. And the dude's crazy. But speaking of Zenoba, he was working diligently on a red worm figure. The process was slow, but he was taking it step by step. So like that's a big project. So I'm proud of him for trying. Anyway, after that, Rudeus would read a bit before going to sleep. Today he read Sig's Summoning, and it was a story about a witch named Sig who had summoned many powerful fiends. In the end, she was killed by a very powerful fiend that she summoned. It cost a lot of resources and plenty of mana, and in the end it backfired. Her students swore an oath to never summon anything beyond their ability to control. Rudeus himself would have to keep that in mind if he ever wishes to summon something. As most books in this world, it did sound like fiction. However, Nanahoshi did give this to him so he could study it. So, I mean, there must be something to it, right? But at the same time, there's really not much for him to study. This is just it sounds like a fairy tale. Even if it's real, it doesn't really help him too much. But anyway, Rudeus thought that he had missed the opportunity to cure his impotence. But as luck would have it, his cure was right around the corner. And now we jump a little bit into the future as winter has officially arrived. Not long after the season began, Soldat had sent Rudeus a letter asking him to hang out. And the reason why Soldat was in the area is because of Thunderbolt, the clan that Steppe leader is in, had been summoned to Sharia to deal with Batagati. But then the request was cancelled. The clan leader had decided to hold their annual meeting in Sharia then, since the main party was already there. Every year during winter, the clan groups up together for a few months to discuss their year's plan. Soldat, however, was dreading this since he didn't really get along with the clan's leader. However, he was reminded of Rudeus being in the city and decided to hit him up. Rudeus wanted to invite Fitz to meet Soldat, but he was busy tending to Ariel in the afternoon, and so it was just Cliff, Alenalise, and Rudeus to meet Soldat. And it's here that Cliff actually talks to Rudeus about curses, not in a classroom like in the anime. It does cut out some details while it's added, of course, as well. Specifically, when Rudeus explained the truth about the Superds and their curse from Laplace, he realized that it was Hitogami that told him about that. Rudeus kept thinking perhaps instead of someone trying to lift and transfer a curse in the past, maybe someone had transferred a blessing. However, both Cliff and Alenalise were confused. They're like, what does blessed children have anything to do with this? We're talking about curses here. And this totally confused Rudeus. He was told that blessed and cursed children were one and the same, just labeled differently. But still, Alenalise and Cliff were still confused. And then he remembered it. Hitogami had told him that as well. The guy really needed to stop, dropping obscure arcane knowledge like it was nothing. It's getting ridiculous. But with his newfound knowledge, however, Cliff was very determined to figure out how to clear Alenalise. And Rudeus makes an internal comment saying, and this is a bit of a long one, "You have to admire the guy. I knew there were some things I'd never accomplished no matter how hard I tried. I probably couldn't have motivated myself to slam repeatedly against a brick wall like that. Smashing your way into a whole new frontier nobody had ever reached before is really something only a genius could ever hope to do." And the reason why I wanted to read that to you is because Rudeus says that is something only a genius could ever hope to do, and I have to heavily disagree with that. And maybe that's the point. Look at Nanahoshi doing the exact same thing with summoning. Zenoba, who is treading new grounds and fighting against his body and soul to follow his dreams and craft figures. Fitz, who is desperately trying to fight his fears and show Rudeus who he truly is, and of course Cliff, who was doing the same thing but trying to cure Alenalise's curse. In reality, Rudeus was the only one not trying to push new boundaries. He's like, yeah, no, I could become saint here in Wind and Fire, but I don't feel like it. It's even arguable that Linny and Persena are they're trying to push new boundaries in their own ways. I don't know how, but I bet you can make an argument for it. And I just wanted to mention that. I don't know if it's hypocrisy, but it's very I don't know, he's just not self-aware, maybe, or trying to make an excuse for why he's not trying to learn more. I don't know. But anyway, Soldat arrives. The conversation goes pretty similarly, although Cliff does get a lot more angry at Soldat for calling Alenalise a slut. And Soldat and the other members start talking about their adventures that they've been on, which made Cliff's eyes sparkle. His dream was to become an adventurer, and so that's what prompts Alenalise to take him out with the other members of Steppe Leader for some monster hunting. He was a little upset that the others were kind of talking down to him and treating him like a kid, but his excitement totally trumped those other feelings. And as Rudeus was walking back, he wondered what he would do today. He decided to do some window shopping for some magical implements or items. And speaking of those, he realized that magical implements and magical items are two very different things. Magical implements were man-made items with magical circles inscribed into them. To activate, the user would have to pump their own mana into them to use its effects. Magical items, however, were naturally made, mostly from labyrinths, and had their own mana supply that could be used a certain amount of times per day before needing to recharge it, which it did on its own over the span of a few hours, or depending on like what the item is. The effect of these were random and you wouldn't really know what it is until you use it, so it's kind of dangerous, I guess. What Fitz had were magical items. His cloak, boots, gloves, and glasses, they all had different effects, and each of them would cost more than Rudeus's entire getup altogether, like gulam-wise. They're very expensive. And if I can remember this properly, the cloak is able to like defend against temperature related things, so fire and ice. So if like you were to like pull the cloak over you, it would kind of just protect you from any kind of fire. The boots would like double or triple your speed, and the gloves, I think, were kind of just like extra tough, like super tough gloves, I'm pretty sure. And the glasses, and both Fitz and Luke had the cloaks, boots, and gloves, which were taken from the assassins that tried to kill Ariel way back, like a few, I don't remember when. I think it's a season 1 episode something episode review. I don't know. It's one that I've talked about plenty of times. It's the death of Ariel. I think it's episode 18 maybe. But the death of Ariel goes over how Ariel almost died. But anyway, now finally, the glasses that Fitz wore were like kind of almost like a Spidey sense, but for Ariel, it would tell Fitz whenever Ariel is in danger, oddly enough. I don't know how that works, but it does. Anyway, because there isn't a need to have mana when using magical items, they were much more expensive than implements. And there were also things called magical swords, which are handmade objects like magical implements, but they had similar effects as magical items. And I'm pretty sure magic swords, there's this one guy, I can't recall his name right now. One of Eris's sword is made by this guy. And he's like, there's like 48 swords. It's very similar to One Piece, actually. I've mentioned One Piece a few times today, but there's like One Piece, like the demon swords, right? Isn't there like a bunch of swords made by one guy and it's kind of just spread across the world? It's literally the same thing as that, if I'm even recalling One Piece correctly. But it's there's like 48 magical swords and there's like 10 extra special ones here. And they're all made by this one guy. And I'm assuming no one else can make magical swords, but I could be wrong. But I just wanted to throw that in there. We'll learn more about him soon, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, after this, Rudeus found Luke and Fitz in a shopping district, which was strange because Fitz said that he had to guard the princess today. And the scene was adapted in its fullest. However, in the books, Rudeus does notice that Fitz seems to be rounder today. Not like fat, but like, Fitz is like kind of like this. Ariel's kind of like that, you know what I'm saying? But then as Rudeus went back to the library, he like met the real Fitz and they talked just as they did in the anime. And to clarify things, we have seen that magical item before, how like Ariel became Fitz. Basically, it's through a magical ring that helped her get to Renoa in the first place. And more about that in my Season 1 Episode 18 skip content video. It's in my notes. Let's go. Kaboom. I had to... That's episode, like, the death of Ariel has been, like, it's once in every 3 episodes, I have to mention it because there's so much that is skipped. I didn't realize how important that was, but I'm referring people back to that episode so much, and I am so sorry for those who have seen it, but it's twice in one video. It's ridiculous. It's way worse than the episode 0 for season 2 that I did. That one, like, mentioned it like 4 times. It's crazy. It's an important one to check out. The death of Ariel. But anyway, how the rings work, right? So you had 2 rings, and one ring would allow you to disguise yourself as the person wearing the other ring. And so for more information on that, there's Season 2, Episode 0. Again, we're going back to these 2. These 2 are very important episodes. I'm so sorry for all the plugs. But anyway, as we finish the scene between the 2, Rudeus starts to finally like verbalize his theory that Fitz isn't a guy. And again, like we've gotten little teases about his thought process here and there, how he's always thinking of Fitz and all of his little quirks, his toothy grin, and even the faint scent that like Fitz leaves off as he walks past Rudeus down the halls, right? right? There's all this stuff that Rudeus is crushing on him, and then there's, you know, what do I put in his crotch for the figure, right? And now he's finally verbalizing, like, what if Fitz isn't a guy? But Rudeus' thoughts are portrayed pretty similarly to how they are in the books, like how they do in the anime and the books, very similar. However, when he asked Genis in the anime about Fitz's gender, that's not exactly how it went. In the book, Rudeus first went to a professor in charge of the 4th year, who served as Fitz's advisor. He asked him about Fitz's gender, but they said that they couldn't give information. After that, Rudeus threatened him by saying that he would fire a stone cannon right up his ass. He's obviously joking, totally. I can't tell if that's a joke or not, but he was ready to kill this man. And it's after that, though, that's when Rudeus went to the vice principal, Genis. Rudeus thinks about things and he uses elegant euphemisms and metaphors for what he wants to do to Fitz. And I forget exactly what he talks about, but he's like, oh, you know, the butterflies and the bees, it's like I am the butterfly, he's the bee, and it's like, I just want us to pollinate. Butterflies and bees don't pollinate with each other. I'm like a flower. He's like a no, hold on. Wait, no. Rudeus would be the one. Well, actually, no. Rudeus probably couldn't pollinize with this thing not working, couldn't he? I know that's not how it works. What am I talking about? But Rudeus thinks about his feelings and like he goes on a bunch of like uses metaphors and like euphemisms and whatever to like think about how he feels about Fitz. But to quote though, he's like, right, let's put aside the pretty words that people always throw around. No more euphemisms about my feelings. I want to sleep with Fitz. I want to do all sorts of things with him. I want to experiment. I want to try a little this, a little that. Okay, you know, maybe that's taking things a little too far. Yeah, Rudeus wants to suck Fitz off. I don't know if I should use that. But anyway, after that, Rudeus fell, putting Fitz on top of him once again. I'm really going to read from the book again. Okay, 1 second. I have to go back up for the 3rd time to grab the book. I didn't even put like a page here now. I don't even know what I'm looking for. God damn. Thanks to those huge sunglasses, I couldn't fully make out his expression, but I could see the bridge of his nose and his slender lips only inches away. I felt the warmth and weight of his body on top of me. Not that he weighed very much at all. A pleasant smell filled my nostrils. It was Fitz's scent, at a greater intensity than I'd ever experienced it before. I could have spent a whole day savoring it. My arms had somehow wrapped themselves around his hips and bottom as we hit the ground. His waist was slender and feminine. His bottom wasn't exactly plump, but it was soft. The sensation alone had my naughty little guy standing at attention. Holy shit. So now Fitz is a girl and my guy is hard. Let's go. What a way to end things. Yeah, Rudeus finds out that Fitz is a girl. His little soldier stands right up tall. And his wise old sage comes back. He is back from the dead. Let's go. What an amazing ending to an amazing episode. So that is all I have for you today. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like and subscribe for more Mushoku Tensei content. And I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.